The question was whether the President and I have spoken following his office contacting mine to arrange the call. The response is we'll be speaking soon, certainly in the course of the next day or two.
Today is a dark day in Canada, mostly because the illegitimate Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who just literally waltzed in off the streets, he's not even Canadian. He's lived in Europe for the past 10 years. This guy announced that to be a Canadian patriot means hating on America, which is why, as of today, our new illegitimate Prime Minister has officially announced that our relationship, Canada and America's relationship, as we have known it, is officially over. Wow, I did not see that coming. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. We are going to be taking a look at our freaking Prime Minister, our illegitimate Prime Minister's new briefing on what his phone call was with the President Trump about the tariffs and what his latest action is. And spoiler, it's a lot nastier than elbows up. It's a complete revamp of relationships with America and other countries as we know it. See, Mark Carney lived in Europe for the past 10 or 13 years. He's barely Canadian. The only reason he's somewhat considered a Canadian is because he was born here. But the moment he was actually able to leave on his own, he did. And now he's back to ruin our country the way he's ruined the financial industry in other countries. But beyond that, he wants to, this is part of the World Economics Forum big plan. This isn't a conspiracy anymore, folks. This is no longer a conspiracy. Canada and America have held hands for years. For years, we've fought in wars, blood, sweat, and tears. People that live in those border towns would hop the border. Those from Windsor would hop the border and go to Detroit and buy stuff from the malls and come back the same day. We all know someone who've done it. A lot of us have participated in that. But that's not the case anymore. Our relationship with America is being completely nuked into oblivion. And what Mark Carney wants to do is push us towards the European Union. But that's not going to work because, well, President Trump had this to say earlier today. If the European Union works with Canada in order to do economic harm to the USA, large-scale tariffs, far larger than currently planned, will be placed on them both in order to protect the best friend that each of those countries has ever had. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that to me is Trump saying, you're not allowed to go and make other friends because we're your best friend, and if you do, we're going to squash you. That is not a good position to be in. So as you can see, there's going to be a whole lot to take a look at today in this video. So I hope you stick around for the full thing. But before we get into the meat and potatoes, I do have a message from today's sponsor. Whenever I hear about tariffs or this trade war, all that I can think about is how this is hurting the Canadian and the American economy, but specifically Canadian and American citizens. And so there's a lot of noise around this from the left and from the right, which is why I've narrowed it down to one place where I can actually find the truth. And that's ground.news. They're an app and website that I have partnered with because they are committed to bringing you the truth. Go to ground.news/sun to see for yourself how this works. Here's a story about Canada retaliating with 25% tariffs on billions of dollars worth of U.S. goods. Over 150 sources from around the world are reporting on the story, and Ground News gives me a quick summary based on all the articles. Looking at the bias distribution bar, we can see that coverage is pretty evenly split across the political spectrum, with coverage coming from both the right and left-leaning outlets. The Toronto Star highlights Trudeau calling tariffs a very dumb move, while Premier Doug Ford orders American alcohol off store shelves in Ontario, framing the response as strong political pushback. Seeing these perspectives side by side on Ground News makes it how clear different outlets shape the narrative, helping you cut through the spin and get the full picture. The difference in coverage makes clear that the left and the right are approaching this from different perspectives, which is exactly why Ground News developed a blind spot feed. It shows you stories that are disproportionately reported by either the left or the right. I find it really helpful for gaining a balanced perspective in our hyper-polarized world. I really think that Ground News is providing the solution that we desperately need. So go to ground.news/sun, click the link in the description, or scan the QR code and send this to somebody who needs it, because if you subscribe through my link, you'll get 40% off the Vantage plan today. And that's the same plan that I use to get unlimited access. That's ground.news/sun. Thank you, Ground News, for sponsoring today's video. Without further ado, let's get into this speech.
The President of the United States is trying to fundamentally restructure his economy. It means our economy, and it means the global economy as well. And I understand and respect his goal to support American workers, but I disagree with him that this is how to help them. With time, it will become apparent that these actions will end up hurting American workers and American consumers. I reject any attempts to weaken Canada, to wear us down, to break us so that America can own us. That will never happen. And our response to these latest tariffs is to fight, is to protect, and to build. We will fight the U.S. tariffs with retaliatory trade actions of our own that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impacts here in Canada. We will protect our workers and our industries during this difficult period. But above all, we will build a new Canadian economy. We will build Canada strong. Coming to terms with this sobering reality is the first step to taking necessary actions to defend our nation. But it's only the first step. Last night, the President of the United States reached out to schedule a call. I appreciate this opportunity to discuss how we can protect our workers and build our economies. I will make clear to the President that those interests are best served by cooperation and mutual respect, including of our sovereignty. Now, to my fellow Canadians, I don't want to set unreasonable expectations. The road ahead will be long. There is no silver bullet. There is no quick fix. And I know and I understand that many are feeling anxious and worried about the future. Fundamental change is always unsettling. But I have every confidence in our country because I understand what President Trump does not. That we love Canada with every fiber of our being. Because we are stronger when we are together, and Canadians are uniting as never before. Now, we are going to have to live the lessons of recent months. First, that we have to look out for ourselves, and second, that we have to look out for each other. The federal government will do everything in its power to protect Canadian workers and businesses. We will be here for you every step of the way. In the past week, my government committed to use every dollar collected from our retaliatory tariffs to protect our workers. Our biggest challenge as a country is becoming the most urgent. Over the coming weeks, months, and years, we must fundamentally reimagine our economy. We will need to ensure that Canada can succeed in a drastically different world. The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, is over. What exactly the United States does next is unclear. But what is clear is that we, as Canadians, have agency. We have power. We are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. We can control our destiny. we can give ourselves much more than any foreign government, including the United States, can ever take away. We can deal with this crisis best by building our strength right here at home. It will take hard work. It will take steady and focused determination from governments, from businesses, from labor, from Canadians. We will need to dramatically reduce our reliance on the United States. We will need to pivot our trade relationships elsewhere. And we will need to do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations. But we can make ourselves more productive and therefore more competitive. We can break down internal trade barriers. We can build a stronger and more resilient economy. And that's what I'm squarely focused on as your Prime Minister. During my first 9 days as Prime Minister, I came to an agreement with the provinces and territories to remove all exemptions under the Canada Free Trade Agreement. As the federal government, we created a first mile fund to provide capital to build transmission and transportation networks to link extraction sites to rail lines and roads. My government is committed to removing any labour mobility restrictions for federally regulated professions by Canada Day. And we're now working with the provinces to identify projects of national significance in order to accelerate the time frame to build them. Hier, je me suis engagé à créer un fonds de réponse stratégique pour le secteur automobile, un fonds de 2 milliards de dollars qui protégera les emplois des travailleurs touchés par les tarifs de Mr. Trump. We will create an all-in-Canada network of supply chains for the auto manufacturing components straight through to Canadian steel and aluminum and critical minerals. And we committed today to create similar strategies in other sectors that are under threat from President Trump's tariffs. All of these initiatives will go a very long way to offsetting the costs of these tariffs if they are permanent, and they will help to realize our potential as a nation. But there's even more to do. And that's why I chose to go to France and the United Kingdom, two long-standing and reliable partners, friends, and allies of Canada. And it's why the time will come for a broad renegotiation of our security and trade relationship with the United States. It's why I will work intensively with our partners in business, in labor, the territories and the provinces to find more ways to help Canadians through this crisis and to ensure that our great country emerges stronger than ever. In recent weeks, Canadians have done their part to unite in defense of our country. To unite also in defense of our way of life. It's my solemn promise as your Prime Minister to do the same. It's my solemn promise that when President Trump threatens us again, we will fight back. We will fight back with everything we have to get the best deal for Canada. We will build an independent future for our country stronger than ever. We will stand up for Canadian workers. We will stand up for Canadian business. We will stand up for our history, our values, and our sovereignty. We will stand together to build Canada strong, Canada free, Canada forever. Thank you. The question was whether the President and I have spoken following his office contacting mine to arrange the call. The response is we'll be speaking soon, certainly in the course of the next day or two.
Can you be more specific about what your counter plan is next week when the auto tariffs come in? Specifically, how much in terms of tariff measures you're going to take on what portion of American goods and what non-tariff measures you'll use?
So thanks for the question. And it goes a bit back to the previous question, if I may just expand on my answer to that. This is a negotiation. It's in part a negotiation where we know certain things, and we know that there was going to be an initiative on automobiles It was brought forward to yesterday. It was expected around the same time as the reciprocal tariffs on the 2nd of April. Those initiatives, just to be clear, apply to all countries in the world. Right? So it's not unique in and of versus Canada or versus Mexico. We have the best deal of a bad deal, is the way I would term it, within what the Americans have proposed. The second is that we know that there are going to be these reciprocal tariffs, as you referenced in your question, on the 2nd of April, as well as there are potential tariffs, or likely tariffs, I would put it, with respect to other, quote, strategic sectors to the Americans, forestry, lumber, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors. There was a comma after that. I'm sorry. It was a very long set of conditions, but it was to set up the point, which is that we have a number of measures that we can take in response to those initiatives. In our judgment, certainly my judgment, it doesn't make sense when there's a series of U.S. initiatives that are going to come in relatively rapid succession to respond to each of them. We're going to know a lot more in a week, and we will respond then. And in a negotiation, it doesn't make sense to tip your hand and say what you're going to do going forward. So that is ça c'est la circonstance en français, si tu veux. Other point I would make, I have discussed this with Premier Ford in his role as Council of the Federation. Obviously, be discussing with the First Ministers under that guise when we convene tomorrow, and I think it's appropriate in taking a response to have those consultations, get the perspectives. The federal government obviously acts taking its responsibilities, but makes sense to engage, and we will act.
President Trump today warned Canada about responding and retaliating, warning that he will escalate his response against Canada, and your minister, Mr. LeBlanc, has spoken to Mr. Lutnick. What message, then, are you taking from that? And are you prepared to bear the brunt of that escalation threat from Mr. Trump? How much pain can Canada take?
Well, look, our responsibility, my responsibility, Minister LeBlanc, Minister Champagne, Mr. Joly, the Cabinet, the government, our responsibility is to Canada and is to get the result for Canada. So our response will be calibrated in order to achieve that. We choose our own allies in Canada. We choose how we engage those allies. We are sovereign. So I take note of the President's comment. I don't take direction from it.
Will you or any cabinet officials be heading to Washington to meet with the U.S. administration?
It's possible that some cabinet officials will. I think, given the timelines, the President and I will speak, as I mentioned. I look forward to the discussion. We'll see where we go from there.
And just to follow up on Tom's question, what do you think about President Trump threatening Canada with more tariffs if Canada works with the EU on countermeasures? Well,
look, we're a sovereign nation. We take our own decisions. I take note of his comments, nothing more.
Next question.
Mr. Carney, Mackenzie Gray with Global News. The last time Premier Ford put electricity tariffs going to the States, there was quite a reaction from President Trump. When you're considering what the retaliatory tariffs that you bring in the future, is there a consideration to put retaliatory or export taxes on Canadian energy going to the U.S.?
Look, we have many options, and we will use them judiciously.
And so, on oil and gas, that is an option that you're considering putting an export tax on that?
Look, yeah, as I said a moment ago to Ms. McCharles, it's a negotiation. You don't, you act when you act. You don't pre-commit.
Do you have a strategy to save the auto industry that doesn't rely on U.S. market access?
Yeah. It's this is a crucial question, and I'm going to broaden your question if I may. I'm going to broaden the question to the 5 strategic industries I just referenced, all of which are important to Canada. And in fact, I would broaden it further to strategic industries that are important to Canada that are not on the list for the President. For example, critical metals and mineral. For example, artificial intelligence. For example, our energy sector, both clean and conventional. For all of those areas, we have been developing strategies, and we will develop comprehensive industrial strategies that work best for Canada. I'm going to give you one example, if I will, Emily, and then I'll hand back, which is we announced yesterday, for exactly these reasons, in anticipation of what happened today, it wasn't originally, or yesterday, sorry, as it turned out yesterday, the American tariffs in the auto sector, we announced the Strategic Response Fund and a series of other measures. But the core of that is to build out the auto sector and our auto supply chain in Canada as much as possible. Instead of autos going back and forth across the border 6 times and getting a tariff each time, we now know the level of that tariff, but integrating the supply chain here domestically, I'm using a fancy term, backwards integrating into steel and aluminum to help our steel and aluminum industries that are used and encourage that, backwards integrating further into critical metals and minerals that we're going to develop. And I listed a number of things that we did at the start that agreed with provinces and the development, working very closely with Premier Ford and others on development of the Ring of Fire rapidly, because that is all relevant to the competitiveness of our auto industry as well as good jobs there and other things. So we have a very clear strategy. We put $2 billion on the table for that. We're changing our federal procurement. We're only going to buy Canadian cars, 40,000 vehicles that we buy in federal procurement. You will see a lot more of that. That's part of an integrated industrial strategy that has the objective of having strategic economic autonomy here in Canada. That's what we want. We want to build out so that we are literally in control of our economic destiny. Now, part of that, and I'll hand back for your follow-up, part of that is going to be trading relationships with reliable partners. The question that hangs over all of this with the United States is there going to be a point in the future through a negotiation where in certain sectors Canadian workers, Canadian businesses, Canadians as a whole can have that confidence in terms of a deeper commercial relationship with the United States in certain sectors. That remains to be seen.
Follow-up?
Can we sustain an auto industry without the United States?
We can sustain an auto industry with, well, we can sustain an auto industry with the U.S. having tariffs, with access to other markets, provided we engage very deliberately in partnership, government, business, labor, to reimagine the auto sector and retool that auto sector. And that's very much what we're putting on the table, we're engaged with doing. It's part of the reason why I was in Windsor and through southwestern Ontario yesterday. That's part of the reason why I was meeting with the president of Unifor to how do we work together with labor on exactly this issue. But I'll go back to what I said a moment ago, and this is a key message for Canadians. We are going to have to do some things very differently. We're going to have to make some big changes, but we can make those big changes. We do have options. We do have agency. We do have power. We do have the resources, particularly if we work together. And so there is a big silver lining in this situation. We didn't ask for this fight. We've got it, and we're going to fight back. We're going to protect workers in the short term. But we're taking the lesson. We have to look after ourselves. We have to build Canada strong.
I don't know about you, but I didn't vote for this. I had no say in this guy running our country, speaking on our behalf. In fact, very few people did. A fraction of the subscriber count of this YouTube channel was actually the deciding factor on whether or not this schmuck should be representing Canada in the interim. 127,000 people. That's actually the subscriber count of my second YouTube channel, House of Canada, linked down below in the description in case you were wondering. This is absurd, folks. This guy is ruining economic ties with other countries, driving us to total bankruptcy. I don't like this. I don't condone for this. And I sure as shit will be heading to the poll as early as I can to vote against this guy. My vote is going for Pierre Poilievre. I don't think that Canada can sustain this type of nonsense, this type of behavior, this type of radical conclusions for 4 more years. We've had 10 years, and look, now we're on the brink of, well, we're not on the brink. We are in an economic war with America, severing all ties with America, reshaping relationships with Europe in a way that we've never seen before. I don't know. Something about this stinks, and at the head of it is Mark Carney. That's the end of the video, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. And thank you to Ground News for sponsoring today's video. And I'll see you guys later. Bye for now.